Today, Splinter Cell Blacklist turned unexpectedly literal. This is CheckPoint. Welcome to CheckPoint, where after a 2-week hiatus raising $1.1 million for a Child's Play charity, we have proven that video games are only a source for good in this timeline.
I agree, and to celebrate, I'm going to fill my mouth with liquid from this stylish CheckPoint mug and hold it there.
Great, I'll start reading the headlines aloud. Sorry to bring up bad news, but remember how Chris Pratt is voicing Mario in the Mario movie? Yeah, let that frisson of dread wash back over you again. Anyway, as everyone expected, he's not doing the whole "It's-a me, let's-a go" Charles Martinet voice. No, but apparently the voice he is using will be phenomenal, at least according to the film's co-producer Chris Meledandri in an interview with 2Fab. Meledandri also defends the film against the interviewer's hypothetical query about the choice to cast a non-Italian-American as the canonically Italian-American Mario, who has been played by an Italian-American a total of 1 times, by saying that Charlie Day's casting as Luigi is the film's nod to the brother's heritage, which is a pretty weak defense, but luckily it's defending a position basically nobody was taking. Fans aren't upset that Chris Pratt isn't Italian-American, they're upset that he's Chris Pratt. And unfortunately for everybody involved, Chris Pratt is undeniably the most Chris Pratt actor they could have cast. Meledandri says they will nod and reference the character's traditional voice in the film, I'm calling it now, presumably through a gag involving a helium balloon, but that he can't wait for people to hear the voice Pratt will be doing. I mean, best case scenario, and I can't believe I'm saying this, it's just Chris Pratt's normal-ass voice. As an aside, a little look at the state of games media. The source for these quotes is a channel called 2Fab, which is basically Australia's TMZ. The video isn't really an interview, it's just some guy with a camera accosting Meledandri outside an airport. But it sure was cited by the dozens of gaming news outlets eager for Pratt-hating rage clicks. But still, that video has literally 1/10 of the views of an episode of this show. Never pays to be a primary source.
Yeah, this story's more than a week old, but hey, so am I, so who's gonna argue? You know what would make a great video game? DUNE! In fact, I'm not the only one who thinks so. Developer Soft Brigade was working on a Game Boy Advance game called Frank Herbert's DUNE, Ornithopter Assault, a first-person flyer/shooter that used voxels to draw Arrakis, Dune, Desert Planet, in all of its beige glory. And yet, it was cancelled due to the publisher Cryo Interactive having financial troubles. Now the game is getting a revival on Kickstarter thanks to publisher The Retro Room Games, but it will be bereft of the original Dune IP rights because I bet those cost a fortune, and so it's being retooled as Elend: The Crystal Wars. Frankly, this is fine. Dune would make a terrible video game. Exhibit A, Frank Herbert's DUNE, Ornithopter Assault, would have you pilot a heavy ornithopter out into the desert to collect a spice harvester and carry it to a new location while avoiding Harkonnen enemy craft and trying to blow up their harvesters. Which is, of course, bullshit, because according to the novels, at no time do the Atreides and the Harkonnen share time on the planet harvesting the spice melange. The only time they're in the same place at the same time, the Harkonnen are bombing the shit out of the palace at Arrakeen, not jockeying for position over who can find the most worm shit. This is what has always complicated all of the Dune games, even Dune 2000, one of the forerunners of the RTS genre. Great game, but little relevance to the themes of the dangerous nature of heroes and messiahs, and how the brutality of a golden path may be the only thing to save humanity from ultimate stagnation, even if it means living for millennia under the iron fist of an ageless worm-man god-emperor whose only wish is to escape the chains of prescience. Man, you know what would make a great video game?
Everything dies. And wow, boy, online multiplayer servers and your faith in humanity are probably not the exception to that rule. The latest example of this phenomenon is Ubisoft's Splinter Cell Blacklist, a game you forgot about because it's 8 years old, and it was pretty good, but not, like, amazing. Basically, the game's multiplayer servers are broken, and have been for a while, but because nobody plays the game anymore, Ubisoft isn't going to fix them. A tale as old as games as a service. But since this is the internet, people sure have been submitting a lot of support tickets about the issue, which apparently prompted this candle in the wind on the game's official forums. I must ask you, our loyal players, to refrain from opening any further support tickets regarding this issue. My team and I have no input into the decision-making process of the game teams, and continuing to weigh down the support team with well-known and unsolvable issues only serves to prevent other innocent players from receiving the prompt problem-solving they deserve. Any support tickets submitted regarding this issue in the future will be met with a 7-day ban. During this period, you'll be unable to make purchases through the Ubisoft Store, log into Ubisoft websites, log into your Ubisoft account, or play through the Ubisoft Connect client. However, you may still play offline. Customer support will not be able to lift this ban. Further offenses will be met with a permanent ban. This post was, of course, 1, immediately deleted, and then 2, denounced by Ubisoft as a fake, which is strange because it was also somehow locked and pinned? Anyhow, who's right here? Obviously nobody. But who loses? Honestly, probably also nobody. It's Splinter Cell Blacklist. So much has happened since last we spoke in the upsetting world of Activision Blizzard that it would take several checkpoints worth of stories to fill you in on all of it. So let's do that! Remember how, after this whole lawsuit mess kicked off, Chief Compliance Officer Francis Townsend sent that company-wide letter that was so bad, CEO Bobby Kotick called it, quote, tone-deaf just days later, and we chided him because he would have clearly known the contents of the letter? Well, according to a banger report in the Wall Street Journal, Kotick actually wrote the letter himself and instructed it to be released under Townsend's name. We thought Activision Blizzard was supposed to be a bad place for women, but here's the boss helping one with her work. Beej?
The ABK Workers Alliance, a not-union, kinda union of Activision Blizzard workers. Oh, the K stands for King, another arm of the company who never gets mentioned, lucky them. The ABK Workers Alliance have called for an end to Bobby Kotick's tenure as CEO after the Wall Street Journal reported that he intervened when HR recommended firing former co-head of Treyarch, Dan Bunting, who had been accused of sexual harassment. Yes, HR actually investigated and recommended he be fired, but Kotick overruled that decision, acting like the cartoon villain they keep trying to tell us he isn't. Graham?
After the compulsory resignation of Blizzard President J. Allen Brack, he was replaced by co-leaders Mike Ybarra and Jen O'Neill, the latter being Blizzard's first woman in such a senior position. A position she has now left immediately, and she'll be resigning from the company as a whole by the end of the year, leaving Ybarra in charge. While her public letter to Blizzard staff was very positive, reassuring, and hopeful, further reports from The Wall Street Journal and IGN state that she contacted Blizzard Legal barely a month after taking the leadership role, claiming she was being, quote, tokenized, marginalized, and discriminated against, all while being paid less than Ybarra, with whom she had made several requests for compensation equity, all of which were denied until after she tendered her resignation. I suppose at that point they figured, if she's leaving, then it won't even be a full pay stub. Kathleen?
At a time when Activision Blizzard should maybe not be giving bonuses to its executives, several members of the C-suite were in fact granted a bunch of restricted stock units earlier this month, including $1 million worth to both the chief legal officer and chief administrative officer, and $3 million to the chief financial officer. Worth noting that these restricted stock units, or RSUs, don't actually do anything until 2025 because RSUs are often used as an executive retention tool. Basically, enough money can even stop a rat from abandoning a sinking ship, especially a ship whose captain is keen to stay in power. Beej?
Activision Blizzard is finding it difficult to distract the public from all of this mess, partly because they don't have any new games coming out, and not every company with unaddressed workplace allegations gets to just release a hit animated Netflix show. In this case, Blizzard announced earlier this month that both Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 have been delayed, citing the departure of a number of individuals across the company and a higher than expected voluntary turnover. Now, there are no new release dates for either game, but then there were no old release dates for them either. This is just an announcement that it definitely won't be soon, because if you can't keep the investors happy, at least keep them informed. Graham?
Oh, did we not mention that Bobby Kotick definitely knew how shitty Activision Blizzard was and never told investors? Like that Treyarch thing where he stopped the dude being fired. But also when Blizzard's Ben Kilgore was fired after repeated allegations of sexual harassment, but praised by Blizzard on his way out the door. Or when an employee at Sledgehammer alleges she was raped by her supervisor twice and told HR, who did nothing, until she threatened to sue them, which led to an out-of-court settlement. So when Kotick talks about how Activision Blizzard is, quote, not a place for discrimination, harassment, or unequal treatment of any kind, the question we have to ask is it a smart business move for your CEO to have the memory of a willfully ignorant goldfish? Kathleen?
Old Bobby sure has some work to do if he wants to keep his impractically lucrative job at the prow of the ABK terror ship and to oversee his response to the crisis as a newly formed Workplace Responsibility Committee. Their job will be to oversee the company's progress in successfully implementing its new policies, procedures, and commitments to improve workplace culture and eliminate all forms of harassment and discrimination at the company, which sounds like a big, vague thing to be in charge of, but hey, they've got a whole committee for it, and that committee has a whole 2 members, Dawn Ostroff and Ravita Bowers, the only 2 women on the Activision Blizzard Board of Directors. The committee is also working to add a new diverse director to the board, and in case you're unsure, yes, diverse in this case is code word for not an old white guy like the rest of the board, who presumably asked Ostroff and Bowers to run this new committee by giving them teas and soaps, the traditional items that men buy for women in lieu of paying them properly. Do you know what I hear that men love getting for Christmas?
What's that?
Gym tips. You just go, oh, man, your glutes are looking a little flat there.
Thanks for noticing.
And then you say, have you tried?
Oh, I haven't tried anything, but I'm glad it's working.
Coming up, Lawn Mowing Simulator is getting its first expansion, the Ancient Britain DLC pack. Which means if you've ever wanted to carefully mow around a henge, I have good news concerning your very specific desires.
There was so much Activision stuff, which we
captured a lot of.
Yeah, I nearly all of it came across. But we did miss a story. This is not an Activision thing. A story that was pretty big while we were off for Desert Bus, which was the Grand Theft Auto Trilogy Definitive Edition.
Oh yeah, which where if you wiggle your car back and forth, it gets large.
Apparently that was actually a thing in the original game.
Oh good, well
and
never
it
mind.
Requires a little bit of setup. No,
Right.
but just generally that it was like a pretty weak attempt at a remaster. But to me the funny part is they pulled it down.
Oh, they pulled Definitive Edition off, the whole trilogy. Okay.
Yeah, and put the old versions back on Steam because they'd done that thing where they're like, we're going to pull the old ones down so you can't even play those. You have to play the so-called Definitive Edition. They pulled it down for legal reasons because the GTA games have a lot of music. And they did not renew all of the licenses for the music. Now, they knew this. They didn't mess up, and it's like, okay, like the music actually still plays. The audio files were still there in the code. What they did to get around the licensing is they just put a flag on it that if a song that they hadn't renewed the license for came up on the radio would just skip that song.
Wow.
But what it means is they're still, from a legal perspective, distributing music that they don't have a license to distribute.
That no one can hear unless
Even though you can't hear it in the game, you have to go looking for it in the source code. They're still distributing the files.
Nice. Good. Excellent.
It was...
like the worst Napster.
Yeah. And the game looked like ass and played like butt. And
Well, yeah.
There was just a bunch of other problems, but it looked like everything had been like upscaled by a machine with no
love.
So
Do care and attention.
yeah, there was
Shits.
a bunch of text jokes on names of stores
Yeah.
got changed in like a way that was like maybe it was being monitored by someone who doesn't have English as a first language, perhaps.
Right.
But like a pun, really like low level GTA puns, just going away because they were being mistranslated.
Right.
Or there was one that was like there was a donut shop called like Nuts, something about like Nuts Donuts, and so it had like a giant donut on the top of it, and then a big like bolt, like a nut and bolt, right? Like a hex.
That looked like it was going into the donut, I'm guessing.
Well, it was just beside it
Oh,
on
I
the
see.
sign,
All
right?
Yeah.
And they both got smoothed. So the hex nut, is just a circle. So it's like, why is this thing called like donuts and bolts or whatever it is? Yeah, that's what it is. It was donuts and bolts or something like that.
Right.
And so it's like the donut looks really nice, but now the bolt is just a circle.
That's a washer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a real thick washer. Thank you for the popcorn.
Did my best.
We don't have to use this one, but I just thought you'd find this interesting. The Activision Blizzard board, when they were like, we're going to be hiring a diverse director. Yeah. I was like, I wonder how diverse the board actually is now. So I looked it up because there's 8 men on the board. Bobby Kotick is one of them.
Well, yeah, the CEO generally is. Yeah.
The other 7 look like Bobby Kotick in different fonts.
Great.
They all look basically the same.
Sure.
Then there's Dawn Ostroff, who is a woman, and then Ravita Bowers is an old black woman who from the 70s to 2016 has been a teacher and an educator and on the board of like education funds. She's on the board of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and I'm like, why are you on the board of Activision Blizzard?
The only thing I could think to that is that she was the last diversity hire.
Maybe
2017?
I assume she just wants money, right? And Activision Blizzard makes lots of money, but it's like it's a very like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. Like I don't understand because everyone else is like just this like big capital, like former Warner, or like one of them is also on the board of Vox Media.
I'm already a CEO at another company, which happens all the time. CEOs do that; they board each other's companies all the time. So yeah.
CEO club.
I could board a couple companies. Who wants me to board your company?
Yeah.
Prepare to be boarded.
Yeah, pillage and forceful redistribution of wealth. That's what you mean, right? By boarding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not putting them up for the night.
Yeah. No.
Putting them up against a wall.
We don't-
I mean...